The Land of Oz is one of the most adapted worlds in all of fiction. Countless movies, TV shows, comics, novels, stage plays, and you get the idea. In one of my prior videos, I took a look at some of the bizarre sequels, prequels, and more to this wonderful franchise. But today, I thought, why not dig a little deeper? What about the Oz films that we can't watch? Where in some instances, only a set photo, telesnap, half-broken film reel, script page, or pitch documents remain. Like the crazy 90s Tim Burton adaptation, which has never been seen by the general public. Or an unreleased adaptation which is incredibly faithful to the novel, which, let's just say, stuck in my mind for slightly terrifying imagery while I was a child. That which is genuinely terrifying. Or what about the original cut of the MGM musical, in which Dorothy had blonde hair and the Tin Man was played by this guy, Buddy Ebsen? That was until he nearly died. So join me today as I take a look at the craziest lost media relating to the Land of Oz. Oh, and if all's gone to plan, this will be on a new channel. So subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting, all really helps me out a lot. Before we do dive straight in, yes, I'm aware, American viewers, I may be a Brit. I'm not an American. Oz is far more culturally relevant over there. But as a child, nothing quite fascinated me as much as the Land of Oz did. I'd just sit at the computer for hours trying to find any Oz-related media. I had a thrilling childhood. I even put my 8-year-old self through the pain of watching those weird, kind of creepy black and white Oz movies from back in the day. Most of them are silent films. And I can't lie, I didn't really understand what was going on when I watched them, but I mean, it was Oz, so I watched. But since then, I've made it my mission to consume every form of Oz media. Similar to my prior ranking video, I have this handy little tier list in which I'm going to rank each of these pieces of lost media. Our top category is the immortal words from the Gnome King in Return to Oz. You let them escape. This is the most desired category. Then we've got I'll Get You My Precious Media for like the pretty cool ones, the ones that would be nice to see returned. Then Melt Away, who cares? This is the category of it would be nice to have them recovered because any form of lost media recovery is pretty cool. Like an example of one of these which did actually get found would be the Wicked Witches episode of Sesame Street. This was a whole big deal. It was an episode that was too scary, so they pulled it, and it actually had Margaret Hamilton as the witch in. However, it is now found media. That's the sort of thing that would go in that tier. Then the bottom tier, I don't know if anything's gonna reach it, but you had the power to skip this all along. This is for like, I honestly don't care whether it gets found or not. Let's dive into our first lost adaptation. Wicked the movie, but not the one you're expecting. Back in the 1990s, long before Ariana Grande or Cynthia Erivo ever stepped into those famous shoes, Universal was developing a very different version of Wicked. And no, actually, it wasn't a musical. This is pre-Broadway musical, when only the Wicked book existed. This was a straight book-accurate fantasy adaptation of Gregory Maguire's novel. No defying gravity, no bubble entrances, no pop-infused Glinda. Instead, it was shaping up to be a dense, quite political film that tackled the darker corners of Oz exactly as the novel does. Universal Studios hired Linda Wolverton, the mind behind Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King, to write the script, and she delivered something so incredibly faithful in fact, that it didn't really work. It kept all of the heavy philosophical narration that the musical smoothed over, and there's been this ongoing thing. I mean, while recording this, I haven't seen Wicked Part 2, the movie, but everyone always says Act 2 isn't as good as the rest of it, and that's probably because the text is incredibly difficult to adapt. The studio even had some wild early casting discussions. Demi Moore was being considered as Elphaba, with Gregory Maguire actually saying, I can imagine Demi Moore naked and green on the cover of Vanity Fair. According to an interview with Platt from Vanity Fair, there were many big actors interested in either directing, buying the rights, or playing the titular character. Some included Selma Hayek, Laurie Metcalf, Whoopi Goldberg, what a plot twist, Claire Danes, and for the role of Glinda, various people were considered, such as Michelle Pfeiffer, Emma Thompson, and Nicole Kidman. For all you Back to the Future fans out there, which, if all goes to plan, there'll be Back to the Future videos on this channel, so stay tuned. But Robert Zemeckis was apparently in talks with the production company to direct this, which that would have been cool. But with all that ambition came a rather big problem. As I've mentioned, it's hardly an easy task to adapt a sprawling, decades-long political commentary into a mainstream film without the musical numbers to break up the intensity. Platt states that loneliness was a key part of Elphaba's origin, and the novel's omniscient narration had the ability to delve into what was happening in her head and heart, but how could the movie do that without overly relying on voiceover? It's harder in a traditional film, Platt says. Usually, you need another character to talk to and tell your best friend what you're thinking or feeling, which is probably one of the big reasons that most adaptations of Wicked, like the musical or the musical movie, so heavily focus on the friendship between Glinda and Elphaba, so that they can both sit there and exposit their feelings to one another without the need of tedious narration. And also, as mentioned, this is pre-Wicked the musical. There wasn't an established fan base who would definitely see this film, so the studio executives got nervous and ultimately decided to part ways with the idea. It was still being somewhat floated about, but when the rights were eventually sold to make a musical, it was just killed completely. The Wolverton script vanished into Universal's archives, unseen by the public to this day. No scans, no leaks, not even a confirmed stray page online. Where am I personally gonna put this on my tier list? Obviously feel free to play along in the comments section down below, but I'm gonna whack it in Melt Away, to be honest. Maybe that's a harsh start. I don't know, I'm not that bothered. We've got 2 Wicked movies now, we've got a musical. I think the musical was probably, for all the aforementioned reasons, always going to be the best way to adapt this novel. So yeah, I'm happy with what we've got. It would be cool to see a parallel timeline, but if it meant going back in time and removing the musical in favour of this movie, I don't think the movie would be that good. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think the script that probably exists somewhere hidden in a vault is going to be worth our time, so melt away. I mean, it's on brand, it's the witch. Wicked can melt away. While on the subject of Wicked the musical, it's also worth noting in terms of lost media that the original catfight scene from the Broadway show had an extended version, which you can listen to some of that dialogue online, and apparently some of that cut dialogue from the show will end up in the movie.
And you send that muleish child off to see the wizard, as if the wizard could help.
Well, I had to say something. I'm a public figure now. People expect me to lie. Be encouraging.
To summarise it, it's basically just extra bitching between Elphaba and Glinda, but it's a fun listen. Our next entry at the time contained one of, if not the most expensive, deleted scene in movie history. One of the many fascinating things about the 1939 Wizard of Oz movie is just how much of it was lost before audiences ever saw it. Studios back then didn't have the idea that we do today of deleted scenes or alternate cuts actually having historical importance. They just thought, if it's not in the movie, it's binned, it's destroyed, what's the point in it? As a Doctor Who fan, as a Back to the Future fan, we all know the pain of this. Like the missing Doctor Who episodes, the Eric Stoltz cut of Back to the Future, it is wild to me that people just get rid of this stuff. Much of what we know about these deleted scenes comes from script notes, still photographs, or crew home movies, rather than the original footage itself. Take, for example, the jitterbug sequence. In the original script, the Wicked Witch sends a magical insect called the Jitterbug to attack Dorothy and her friends, forcing them into a wild and uncontrollable dance, a last-ditch way to slow them down before the flying monkeys arrive. The scene was filmed, complete with choreography, costumes and music, but the studio cut it for a number of reasons, one of which was that they worried that the jitterbug dancing might become outdated and make the film feel old-fashioned. In the stage play, this number does still survive. But alas, the original movie footage of this scene with Judy Garland has probably long since deteriorated or been destroyed, never to be seen again. Kind of. For decades, it seemed lost forever. That was until a crew member's private home video behind the scenes footage resurfaced sometime in the late 80s. By syncing that footage with the surviving soundtrack, we can get a kind of half-ish glimpse of Dorothy spinning through the trees with the Cowardly Lion, the Scarecrow twirling with the Tin Man, Toto sort of darting around for dear life, and even the forest trees swaying in time with the beat of the track. It's chaotic, mad, and there's just an element of creepiness to it. I think this scene, like, there's other deleted scenes and lost footage we'll come to, but this scene alone, the Jitterbug scene, I'm gonna put in I'll Get You My Precious Media tier. Because a part of me's tempted to put it right up there at the top, but I think we'll leave that spot for potential other scenes, because I do think, once again, this makes sense that they cut it. I mean, they almost cut the song Over the Rainbow, which is absolutely crazy. Like, that would go straight in You Let Them Escape if that was lost to time, because that sort of defines the movie. But I do think the concerns over this dating the film would have probably come to play. Like, from what I can tell through my research, the dance was very contemporary and of its time, whereas The Wizard of Oz at the moment, like the MGM film, has that classic timeless feel. I reckon it's probably for the better this scene wasn't included. That doesn't mean it isn't an absolutely huge shame that we can't see it. Like, there's also that deleted scene of it's like an extended version of the Scarecrow's dance where he's jumping and doing some pretty impressive wire work where he's like flying around, bumping off pumpkins and such. Like, that's a pretty cool scene, and I wish we could, just like that Scarecrow scene, watch the Jitterbug scene as a bonus feature, but I'm glad it's not in the actual movie. I mean, it's in the stage play, as I say. If you go and watch it on the West End, you'll see it there in Andrew Lloyd Webber's version, but you know what, we can live without it, but it would be really cool to see. Any piece of the MGM movie I'm gonna have in one of the two top tiers, because, yeah, it's iconic. Another missing sequence comes after the Wicked Witch's demise. In the final film, we cut straight to Dorothy arriving at the wizard's palace, but the original plan was for a far more elaborate, and once again incredibly expensive set piece called the Triumphant Return to the Emerald City. Upon the witch being defeated, Dorothy instantly starts apologising to the guards.
I didn't mean to kill her.
Panicking that as her loyal subjects, they'll now go after her and her friends. But instead, the guards begin to sing a reprisal of Ding Dong the Witch is Dead.
Hey, kill Dorothy!
This time about the Wicked Witch of the West rather than the Wicked Witch of the East, followed by a parade through the Emerald City. Once again, this entire sequence was fully filmed, realised, shot, costumed, etc., and only 5 seconds of the original footage survive thanks to one of the trailers MGM made for the movie at the time. However, the rest of the sequence, as happened with the Jitterbug, is simply lost to time. You can see sort of scene recreations, fan-made stuff online. We can, as well, there's like a crackly audio track of this reprise. I'm gonna put it next to the Jitterbug. It's not up there for me. It's still, nothing yet has made it into You Let Them Escape. But well there, we're not done with the MGM movie just yet. There's loads more cutscenes and deleted moments from the movie, which I may well expand on in a future video if you enjoy this one. But to give you a quick summary and overview, when Dorothy's locked in the witch's tower, there's a very sad, sobbing reprisal of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which is actually really emotional and I do think is a shame got cut. There was also a quick gag about the changing of the guard. The guy who says "Bell out of order, please knock" just twists up his moustache and he's pretending to be a different guard. We can see trailer footage of this, but the original footage that went into the film, that's lost to time as well. There was also a short sequence which is kind of referencing a scene from the original novel. After the Wicked Witch says to the Tin Man, "I'll turn you into a beehive," bees start attacking the crew, and just like the book, Dorothy jumps and hides, the Scarecrow tries to protect her because he's made of straw, and the bees begin to sting the Tin Man. But as they sting him, because he's obviously made of metal, the bees just start dying. This starts to make the Tin Man sad because he's accidentally killing the bees. Then one bee crawls up Dorothy's arm, he picks it off her, and accidentally crushes it, at which point he starts crying, and this is where the film picks up, where they're like, "Don't cry, you'll set yourself off rusting again." Now you might be wondering how on earth in 1938 were they going to be doing these effects with bees? Well, they were going to be animated, which, yeah, I'm not quite sure how good that would have looked, and if you thought the jitterbug would date the film, animated bees might have been a step too far. But what about alternate versions? Next up on our Lost Oz Media journey is one of the most surreal what-ifs in the film's history. The original cut of The Wizard of Oz actually featured Buddy Ebsen as the Tin Man, and Dorothy had book-accurate blonde hair. The MGM classic that we all know and love wasn't the first version the studio shot. In fact, this alternate version was filmed for only about 2 to 3 weeks before production was completely halted. Buddy Ebsen, who would later become famous for the Beverly Hillbillies, was originally cast as the Tin Man, but the makeup process for his character was, to put it lightly, utterly catastrophic. The studio was experimenting with aluminum-based paste makeup, designed to give him that metallic shine. Unfortunately, unbeknownst at the time, it was incredibly toxic. After 2.5 weeks of shooting, Ebsen had a severe allergic reaction, developing respiratory problems that very nearly killed him. He had to be hospitalised, and production had to come to a swift conclusion. And you'd assume, okay, one of your lead stars is ill, like, it's your fault, studio, we'll wait till he's better, we'll financially compensate. No, who cares? They just completely and utterly recast him with a new guy. The new guy that is in the final movie, Jack Haley. Most of the footage featuring Ebsen was reportedly destroyed, or I'm still hoping that it's out there somewhere. Come on, film is fabulous. Work your magic. It could be in a private collection somewhere. But that wasn't the only thing. As I mentioned, Dorothy in this early version didn't have her iconic brown hair. She had a weird, kind of pantomime-looking blonde wig. It really does give the surviving production stills an almost uncanny alternate universe vibe. Because the film was only partially shot, we have no surviving footage of blonde Dorothy interacting with Ebsen's Tin Man. Only a handful of set photographs and some costume tests remain. Although Ebsen still lives on in the movie, they never actually re-recorded "We're Off to See the Wizard's" vocals, so every time you hear that chorus sung, Buddy Ebsen is actually singing the Tin Man's part rather than Jack Haley. Although, I don't think he was ever credited for this, so can we get a #justice for Buddy Ebsen in the comments? You know what, this is the first thing that's going to make it into "You Let Them Escape." I think out of all Oz media relating to the MGM movie, that is the thing I would most like to see, the OG cut. Like, how different is it? How different is Buddy Ebsen's performance? And just seeing the various looks of the different characters, it would be surreal, it would be bizarre, it would be like stepping into a parallel universe. That's got to go up there. Next up is Disney's Rainbow Road to Oz. And yes, this is a Disney adaptation of Oz way predating Return to Oz. Long before that 1980s film brought a darker live-action take to the screen, this was Walt Disney, yes, the Walt Disney's personal attempt at making an Oz project. Production began in the mid-1950s and was originally pitched as a television special, but quickly ballooned into plans for a full feature film. The vision? A colourful, once again musical, extravaganza starring a cast of mainly children, most of whom were what the kids are calling Mouseketeers. For those of you who don't know what a Mouseketeer is, because I didn't really. A Mouseketeer was a child performer on Disney's Mickey Mouse Club in 1955, known for singing, dancing and acting in skits while wearing the infamous Mickey ears. The project got far enough along that preview musical numbers were actually filmed, including songs like Patches or The Oz Can Hop, and the title track The Rainbow Road to Oz. Some of this material was even broadcast for the 4th anniversary show of Disneyland in 1957. But here's the thing. The movie was never actually made. Budget concerns and doubts about whether a cast of TV kids could carry a major motion picture, and the shifting studio priorities left Disney to shelve the project entirely. So, what survives? Well, some of the songs were re-recorded later for Disneyland Records, and a handful of concept art and set designs by Joe Rindali give us a glimpse into Disney's Oz that never was. The thing that fascinates me about this entry in particular is it was Walt's, actual thing. You always hear about, oh, Disney did it, but this is actual Disney. This is the man, the myth, the legend. And it probably wasn't going to be very good, I'm going to be honest. And the word Mouseketeer, I'm not on board with this, guys. I'm sorry. I'm actually going to whack it in the bottom tier. You had the power to skip this all along. If it was made and they found it, I wouldn't even watch the full thing. I really don't care that much. I'm not, the vibes aren't there. I think it would be incredibly forgettable, and it's only really of note because of Walt himself, and because it never truly came to be. And from what I've seen of the Mouseketeers so far, it's a shame that no one put out some cheese and traps. Okay, maybe, I don't know, is this an American thing? Let me know in the comments, let's start a poll. Do the Mouseketeers deserve to be destroyed? Oh, that was harsh. Okay, the next entry is bizarre. And it's bizarre because it may not exist. At the moment, it only exists in people's memories. Although it is officially listed on OzWiki, which, that's got to be the most reliable of sources. And there are also numerous articles and posts online of people discussing remembering a similar type of film being released when they were younger. I'll read a couple of accounts online from varying sources about what this iteration of Oz would have been. Posted to r/movies, then r/lost media, Magica12 asks, recently, I've been watching old classics and other movies I vaguely recalled from my childhood. One such thing is a Wizard of Oz sequel, where Dorothy returned to a ruined Oz and everyone was turned to stone. Now, this immediately sounds like Return to Oz, so I watched it, and it didn't quite fit the bill. The story elements were similar, but I recalled more green motifs and an older Dorothy. After scouring the internet for a while, I found a few references to a 1995 British television adaptation that starred Denise Van Outen, and follows several plot points of Return to Oz. This sounds like it fits the bill, but it's also the only information I can find on it. If anyone can point me in the direction of a plot synopsis, screenshots, or place to watch this film, that'd be most appreciated. I need to confirm that my brain's not lying to me. Another post reads, was Denise Van Houten in a British TV version of The Wizard of Oz? Yes, Denise was in a British television version of The Wizard of Oz. She played the role of Dorothy Gale. It was shown in 1995 on Channel 5. It has been described as a bit more adult version of the beloved 1900 book and 1939 film from the United States of America. I've looked and looked, but honestly I can't seem to find much official evidence other than hearsay that this is actually a real thing. It could just be another case of the internet perpetuating fake stories again. Weird, but do let me know in the comments if you remember this. Like, let's solve this case. Just because we know so little about it, and because as well the descriptions are saying it's similar to Return to Oz, I'm gonna put it in I'll Get You My Precious Media tier, because you know, I'd be intrigued by it if it was real. The fact that it may not exist is building up more mystery, which makes me more intrigued. Next up, we have the long-lost 90s Tim Burton Oz adaptation. Tim Burton's Lost in Oz. The Oz project you probably didn't even know existed. I mean, I sure didn't until this video was being prepared. This was a planned TV series from the late 90s, with Burton producing, and writers Terry Colloway and Michael Cattleman and Joel T. Smith at the helm. The premise, a group of high school students and their teacher get swept up into Oz in a Winnebago during a tornado. Okay, interesting pitch so far. Only to discover Ozma and the wizard are both missing from Oz, leaving the entire land in chaos. Burton's vision was shaping up to be a totally different, slightly magically Tim Burton darker, and incredibly bizarre iteration of the Land of Oz. Some concept art of whatever the hell that is does actually survive, and you can find it in various places online. And apparently, certain scenes that were important to the plot filmed, whether that be to show to executives or as like a little sizzle reel or something, I don't quite know, but reportedly this picture is the only evidence and only thing that survives of the Tim Burton directed Oz bit. None of it has ever been released to the public. The script is, from what we know, around 70 pages long, and even includes maps of Oz, with new regions added such as Mongaboo, Bunbury, Foxville, and Quok, places you definitely won't find in the original Oz books. According to other sources, the project never actually got past pre-production, mainly down to budgetary concerns. In a bizarre turn of events, though, it seems that the loose plot was actually recycled into a Tim Burton-less TV pilot, which was uploaded to YouTube by some random person in 2013. This pilot episode follows the basic storyline and is often confused by fans for the lost Tim Burton footage, but from what I've seen, they're two separate things. I'll leave a link to that in the description if you want to go and check it out yourself. Yeah, I wasn't that on board with it, to be honest, but whatever floats your boat. If we're ignoring the pilot episode that does actually exist, imagining a Tim Burton Oz is incredibly exciting. Maybe it deserves Melt Away because it doesn't actually sound that, oh yeah, but Tim Burton's good, isn't he? Like, if it were to have existed, if it were to be real, it would probably be quite iconic, quite stylised, quite Tim Burton, mainly because it was made by Tim Burton. Yeah, we'll put it in I'll Get You My Precious Media. You know what, fair play, fair enough. The next entry on the list is a book written by Frank Baum. Now, notice how I didn't say L. Frank Baum. This was written by the eldest son and is heralded by Oz fans and critics alike as one of the worst books ever written. Originally entitled Rosine in Oz, then changed to The Laughing Dragon of Oz, then changed to just The Laughing Dragon because those who held the Oz copyright refused to allow this work to be part of the canon. The story follows protagonist Rosine, an American girl, accompanied by her pet monkey Jim. They fall from an aeroplane and land in Oz. They meet Captain Bob, a lighthouse keeper who was blown into Oz via a storm, and their goal is to return to the USA, while also searching for the missing Princess Cozy Toes. They encounter the titular Laughing Dragon, who helps them along their journey, but as I say, it was originally refused to be published. So Baum reformatted it into a non-Oz book just under the title Rosine and the Laughing Dragon, but that still wasn't good enough to be published. The name alone wasn't getting the book anywhere. And to rub salt in the wound, one of the main people not endorsing this book, not allowing it to be part of Oz canon, was Maud Gage Baum, who controlled the rights to her late husband L. Frank Baum's works. However, this didn't stop Frank Baum Jr. He published the book anyway, and was then sued by Whitman Publishing for copyright infringement. He even took it one step further and tried to publish a sequel to this book, The Enchanted Princess of Oz, but the legal proceedings got in the way, and we will never see that book. After being out of print for 70 years, eventually, somehow, a second edition of the book got printed in 2006. And Sarah Bird called it hollow and heartless, and said that Baum Jr. was an incompetent pretender. Ouch. But realistically, this has to go in the bottom category. Another very quick addition to this list is The Wonderful Land of Oz, which you can actually watch on YouTube. This technically isn't lost media. What is lost media, however, is the names of certain female members of the cast. Now, this is something that puzzled Oz fans for quite some time, but on closer inspection, the movie was written and produced by Barry Mahon, who was well known for making low-budget, adult films. So it's quite likely, I mean, I'm not going to go into in-depth research on this, but it's quite likely that the missing names of the actors in this film are just adult stars who he's brought along to help him with another project. And also, if you haven't seen it, just go and watch the film. It's one of the worst things I've ever seen. It's hilariously bad. I'll also give a shout out to the Return to Oz parade float, something which as a child I desperately wanted to see, but in the late 90s it burnt to a crisp and was never seen again. It had a box shape with reflective mirrors resembling Princess Mumby's palace. There was a live actress playing Dorothy, live actors playing Jack Pumpkinhead, puppets of the Tin Woodsman, of TikTok, but as I say, all the electronics got to it, it burnt to a crisp, and we've never seen it again. I also want to give a very quick and very angry shout out to Disneyland Paris, who decided to destroy my childhood. The only mention of Return to Oz in any of the theme parks was on the Enchanted movie ride. There was a little Emerald City with little statues of the Oz characters outside, but the last time I went, which was last summer, it's been destroyed, completely taken away, and replaced with the movie Up. Absolutely disgraceful. And the last entry on today's list is probably the piece of Oz media that nobody watching this video will have heard of, maybe a couple of you will have, but it's something that I've been trying to track down since I was about 8 or 9 years old. You see, I've always had a very vivid memory of watching a trailer for a book-accurate Oz adaptation which featured some pretty striking imagery. A dead mule.
Well, the mule's dead.
A very cool-looking CGI Tin Man, a terrifying Wicked Witch with sort of slobber dripping out her mouth.
Silence your voice before I do it for you.
And a very cool but slightly uncanny valley creepy-looking Scarecrow, which is incredibly book-accurate. Now, I went down a right old rabbit hole trying to figure out what on earth I was remembering, because, as I say, those core images really stuck in my mind. But you see, every trace of what I just described to you seemed to have been erased from the internet entirely. Or had it? Well, I'm gonna pull a Wicked movie here. End of part 1. Yeah, sorry to be that guy, but this sort of ballooned into an entire separate video, so if you want to see the conclusion to this Oz Media Holy Grail tier list, make sure you're subscribed and check out my next video as soon as it's out. I mean, it's probably going to be out now, so check it out right now. It might be on screen, or it will come at the end of the video. Cheers, hope you did enjoy, thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, share, all really helps me out a lot. Thank you, and goodbye.